Welcome to the Wilson Center's Ghostlight Series at Cape Fear Community College. We are proud to announce a new part of our series, which will be special guests on Sundays at 7 p.m. These special guests and personalities have graciously agreed to allow proceeds donated during their performance to support Broadway for a Better World, our program which allows those from our communities, particularly youth, to attend any performance at the Wilson Center. I would like to thank our partner, Rhonda Bellamy with the Arts Council of Wilmington and New Hanover County. And as always, I pray that you and your loved ones stay safe at this time. And as always, thank you for being our guest.
Hi everybody, I'm Cullen Moss. Welcome to my 30-second introduction. I'm going to tell you a story today for the Ghostlight Series. I'm a North Carolina kid. I grew up in Winston-Salem, moved to Wilmington at the age of 21, where I got involved in theater, thank God, and I cut my teeth there and learned from some of the greatest. I now am pursuing a career in film and television, and you can see me currently in Outer Banks on Netflix and a host of other things. IMDb me. I was recently on stage in Wilmington and Cage Aux Folles over the new year. Enjoy the story. Bye.
Well, I want to tell everybody a story today. I'm sure you heard of a young feller named Jack. He's a feller what clumb a beanstalk once upon a time and felled a giant after stealing a singing harp, etc., etc. Well, that ain't the only story there is about Jack. There's a lot of stories, and they started over in England, over the island in Europe, and they come over, and people from England, you know, that told these tales about Jack and the king and this king and that king, and Jack done this and Jack done that, and these stories settled in the hills of the Appalachians, and they had told from one person to another over years and years and years, and they still keep kings in them stories, and some stories more interesting than others. But they're all long, so I hope you got a minute. This story's about Jack and the doctor's girl. All right? Now, there was hard times in the town where Jack was living, and there weren't much work to be found. So in his free time, Jack, he'd leave his mom and daddy's house, and he'd go visit this girl's house that lived down the holler, and she's the daughter of a doctor, the only doctor in the holler. And they took a shine to one another. She liked Jack pretty good. And he'd bring her little things and doodads that he'd find, or he'd whittle something, and she liked him. She recognized he's right smart and clever, because he was clever. And she liked him real good, and Jack said, well, I might ought to court her directly. And his daddy went, as things was done, and talked to the doctor, and his daddy said, Jack would sure like to court your girl. And the doctor said, well, what sort of job is Jack a holding? Because just like today, people still, put some merit in that. And Jack's daddy said, well, he ain't got none, but he got good sense, got a good head on his shoulders. Doctor said, well, I'd like to see some of that money, honey, and you better get that boy a job. Well, Daddy come back and he said, Jack, I'm gonna tell you that doctor, he wants you to get a job before you can court that girl. And I'm sorry to tell you, there ain't no job around. And Jack said, well, I'm gonna find one. I'm gonna find a job, and I'm gonna get that girl. So he set off looking for a job, and there wasn't one to be found in the holler. I don't know if y'all are familiar with looking for a job when there ain't one to be found. I mean, it was almost like he's an actor or something. He couldn't find work no matter where he scratched at. So he set out the holler and started an unfamiliar territory. And he's climbing through this path and that off the path too, and it got to be nighttime. He walked straight into night and into the next morning, and next day it started raining, and walked straight into that night, and he couldn't remember when the last morsel he had ate was, and he's plumb tuckered, and he didn't see a light in her house nowhere till he see up on the side of a ridge a little old cabin. And he go up to that cabin, and he is just right sorry. He's plumb tuckered is what they say. And he walked up to that cabin, pretty dark in there, and he knocked on that door, and an old woman come to the door. She said, "What you want up in this house? What are you doing here?" He said, "Well, I'm trying to find that out myself. I'm not even sure how I got here." He said, "I'm tuckered and I need a place to stay, and I bet if you let me sleep on it, I could tell you why I'm here in the morning." And she said, "Well, honey, I ain't gonna let you in because this is a robber's house. It's a highwayman's house, and them highwaymen's gonna come back and they gonna string you up, son. So you better keep it moving." And he says, "Well, consarn you and consarn them highwaymen, I'm tired and I'm gonna lay down and rest." And that's what he did. He pushed a woman aside and he found him some hay in the corner room, and he laid down on that hay, and before you know it, his sawing logs just out like that. Well, sure enough, just like a woman said, them highwaymen, robbers, what steal, they come back into that house, and they had with them a big old sack of things they stole. And they got in there and they said, "Howdy, woman." She said, "Howdy, highwayman." And they come up to the table, big old wood table, and they put out the money and the trinkets and everything they stole on the table, and they begin to count at it all, and then they hear a big old coming from that pile of hay in the corner, and they said, "By gum, what was that?" A main highwayman said that, and the woman said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, this boy come in here wet and tuckered, and he done passed out on the floor right there." And the fella said, "Well, I guess we got to kill him." And one of them got out a gun, a pistol, what he had on him. And she said, no. She said, no. You don't go shooting somebody while they sleep. I can't stand to see someone getting shot and killed in their sleep. She said, "You got to wake him up first, have some courtesy, And he said, "Well, all right, I guess we will wake him up." And so they shook it, Jack, and Jack come up, and they said, "Who are you, boy?" And he said, "Well, good morning to you. My name's Jack. Who are you?" And they said, "Well, we're the highwaymen, and we aim to kill you because we don't like nobody messing in our business. So that's what's going to happen." And another little one says, "Yeah, that's what's going to happen because dead men tells no tales, Jack." And Jack said, "Well, if you're going to kill me, I guess that's all right, but I don't got nothing on me but the clothes I'm wearing and the dirt on my feet." And he said, "I got no money or nothing, so go on and do what you got to do." And the men, they felt right sorry for him. They said, "Well, shoot, Jack, are you any good at stealing?" And Jack said, "Well," he said, "I don't know. I ain't tried it really." He said, "I'm fairly clever." He said, "I reckon I could. I'd do anything just about to stay alive, wouldn't any man?" And they said, "Yeah, I reckon. We're going to put you to the test." They said, "Tomorrow morning, Jack, there's a feller who got oxen that he brings into town, and he'll bring 3 oxen come daylight. And if you can steal them 3 oxen, Jack, we'll give you some money and we'll send you on your way." And Jack said, "All right, I reckon I'll try it." And he didn't know how he's going to steal 3 oxen. I don't know if you ever seen an oxen, but it's a fairly large animal, and how you going to just steal one from a feller? And so he goes into the path that led to town. They gave him directions, and he's able to follow because, like I said, he's a crackerjack. And he goes down as the sun's coming up, and he don't see nobody, but he does see an old piece of rope sitting on the side of the road, and he don't know what he's going to do with it, but he figures, hey, piece of rope. So he picked it up and he had it with him. And then sure enough, he hear a clomping coming down the path, but he only sees 1 oxen and a farmer feller leading it up ahead. And so Jack, he runs down the path way up ahead of this farmer and his ox, and he sees a tree with a limb what go out right over the road, okay? And Jack, he clumb up that tree real quick. He ties a rope around the limb, and he ties a hank of it around his waist, and then he had another hank he cut off, he ties around his neck, and he just hung there from that limb like that, looking like he was hanged in the road, just like this. And he is swaying in the breeze, looking right sorrowful and dead. And that farmer come up, and sure enough, when he round the bend, he seen this feller hanging, and he said, whoa, Buck. He said, "I reckon them highwaymen done come around here and hung a feller." And he says, "Well, I got to get back to town quick and tell everybody, and I'm going to bring some people back here, and they're going to help me cut him down." And so he said, now, Buck, I'm going to tie you, Saw. Buck, you stay right here. And he tied that old buck to the base of the tree. And he run back to town, tell everybody. Well, as soon as Jack see him skedaddle around the corner, Jack, he hoists himself up, get off that rope, and he gets down that tree. He puts the rope around the oxen, and he takes it on back to the robbers. Well, after a while, old farmer, he comes back with town people. He says, and he was hanging right here. He was hanging. It must have, well, from this tree. Well, I guess it wasn't this tree at all. He said, come on, we're going to find that tree. And they looked till it was about sundown for that tree, and he never did find it and never did know what happened to that ox. And they went back without an ox, without a clue. But Jack, he come up back to the robber's house with that ox. And they said, by gum, Jack, you did it. You a thief yet. I said, I'll tell you what, Jack. We're going to give you $300. Now, a little detail I did not add. That doctor had a specific amount he wanted Jack to earn. He said Jack got to get a job, and he got to have $1,000, which is a lot back then, in that holler in particular, $1,000 to his name before he can go a-courting my daughter. So, now you know. And they said for this ox, they give him $300. I don't know how your arithmetic is, but you start adding up. And they said, now, it was just that one ox. They said he gonna bring another one guaranteed tomorrow. He said, you steal that ox, we give you another $300, Jack. He said, all right, I reckon I can. But he knew he couldn't pull the same trick on that farmer. So he heads to the path, and he's a-thinking and a-thinking. And before he leaves the cabin, he sees a woman's shoe sitting there on the floor. He got an idea. So he gets that shoe, and he hears a clumping of that ox coming down to the farmer, whistling a little tune. I'd whistle it for you, but I wasn't there, and I don't know what it was. So Jack, he throws that woman's shoe out there in the road, okay? Old farmer come along, he says, whoa, 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 Buck. There's a shoe right there, a woman's shoe. That's a good woman's shoe too. I tell you what, I bring this back to my wife. It might last her all winter. Yes, it would, and she might just get to kissing on me and get me some sugar and get her a nice pair of shoes. And he said, but this old shoe right here ain't gonna do no good by itself. He said, I gotta find a match for it. Well, heck, and he throws it down. He said, ain't gonna do nobody any good. And so he throws that shoe down and he goes on. And Jack was off hiding in the brushes. Now, as soon as that farmer and the ox go, Jack goes, he fetched that same shoe. The farmer just threw down on the ground, and he goes around, takes him a quick cut through the woods, round the next bend, beats the farmer around the corner, and puts that shoe right out in the middle of the path. Farmer comes around with the ox. Now, we both know it's the same shoe, but that farmer sees that shoe. He says, by gum, hold on, Buck. He says, there's another shoe. Oh, man, he said, I got two shoes for my wife now. He says, I tell you what, we got to go back and get that other shoe now, don't we? And it's a bit of a trudge with an ox. He figured he could run back there quick by himself. He says, I tell you what, Buck, I'm going to tie you right here, and I'm going to go back and get that shoe. And when I come back, we're going to get back home, and I'm going to get some sugar from my wife. And I'm going to have a new pair of shoes for her last all winter. So he come back looking for that shoe, and y'all know how that come out. He didn't find it, did he? And you know what Jack did? He come out the brush, and he untied that ox, and he take him back to the robbers, you know, what was back in the cabin. And they said, well, you done it again, Jack. And this little one said, yeah, you sure did. We're going to give you $300, Jack, and for that. And we'd like a third ox, and you don't mind. You can go pull the same thing on that farmer tomorrow morning when the sun come up. And Jack says, well, at this point he got $600. He says, I reckon I will. So he does, and he's thinking and thinking, and he says he don't have a shoe on him, and he don't have a rope no more, and says, what am I gonna do? And he hears the farmer coming, so he goes and he hides in a thicket up on a ridge. And he sees that farmer coming with an ox, and Jack let out a moo, just like that. And farmer stopped. He says, oh, Buck, I think I hear one of your brethren. That what I lost. He said, I thought maybe I done got robbed, but I think they just clumb off in the brush. And Jack run off down the ridge a little ways, and he give another Farmer said, Buck, I think I heard the other one. And then Jack, he come right between the ridge and where he just run, and they give a moo, moo. Farmer said, I think they both together now. Well, I'm gonna go fetch him. I have all three, and I'm gonna take them to town, and shoo, boy, I'm gonna make some money, you know. And he says, now, Buck, I'm gonna tie you, and I'm gonna tie you good. Saw, Buck, stay right here, and don't go wandering off into no thicket. And so he tied that buck off, that oxen, and then he went off a running, looking for them other two, and Jack put him on a chase. Hey, moo here, and he moo there, and he run all through the brush and everywhere he could, and before you know it, that old farmer was caught up in a mountain laurel, you know. He's tangled up in it, and Jack, he swooped down and he got that other ox. And he took it to them robbers, them highwaymen, and boy, was they happy. They was clapping them on the back. They said, that's three, that's a hat trick, Jack, right there. You got three of them. You sure did. I'll tell you what, we're going to give you $400 for that one right there, is what we're going to do. And I tell you what, we got our three oxen. You go on your way. And Jack is right happy. So he got home about nighttime that night. $1,000. He says, Daddy, I done it. And his daddy says, you done it. I'm gonna go talk to that doctor. Now you might think this is the end of the story, and you might wish it was, but it ain't. His daddy go to the doctor and he says, my son come back tonight. He got $1,000 like you asked for. And the doctor looked at him and he says, well, $1,000. That's right nice. But I tell you what, how did he get that $1,000? And Jack's daddy had to tell him. He told him all them exploits I done told you, and I ain't gonna tell you again because you sat through it once. I ain't gonna make you do it again. And the doctor says, well, he's so good at stealing, why don't he try me out? And I'm gonna give you something he can steal. He said, why don't you send him over here tonight? And he's got to steal 12 horses. His daddy says, I reckon he could. Out from under 12 men what's gonna be riding them horses. See, can he do that? And then he can have my daughter. Jack's daddy went back. He says, Jack, you might as well forget about that girl, because he wants you to steal 12 horses out from under 12 men what's going to be in his yard, and them men going to be sitting on them horses. And Jack says, I ain't going to give up. I'm going to try. And so he does. Well, he gets there that night, and he sees 12 men behind the fence riding 12 horses, just like old Doc says. And Jack had with him a keg. And he set up on that fence with that keg, and the men riding the horse, they look over and they see Jack with that keg, and they say, he thinks he's gonna get us drunk, and then he's gonna steal our horses. Shoot, he ain't gonna get me drunk. No, he gonna get you drunk. Ain't gonna get me drunk. Ain't gonna. All 12 of them agreed. They wasn't gonna fall for it. But it got right cold, and Jack, he pretended to take him a drink of it. He took him a dram. And he's like, oh boy, that sure warmed me up. And them men riding them horses looking at him, getting all warmed up. Finally, one come over to him. They said, Jack, just give me a little, just a little treacle of it. Just a little treacle is all I want. Just enough to warm me up, not to get drunk. And he done it. Get back off into the corral there, and one by one, they all say, you know what? I think I'll take just a little drink of it. And they done it, and they all felt pretty satisfied. They said, you drunk? No, I ain't drunk. And they all, each one of them, fell right over them horses' neck. They sawing logs themselves, all 12 of them, sounded like a sawmill. And what Jack had done, the old smarty pants, he had put chlorophyll is what you find in a leaf, from what I know. Chloroform in that keg along with the whiskey. And he knocked them all out. Well, he took each one off them horses and he put them on a haystack, took them horses back home, and in the morning his daddy took the horses to the doctor, says, here's your horses, and ain't a man on them. My son done it. And the doctor said, well, yes, he did. Well, how about one more task I'd like to see him do? He's such a good thief. I'd like to see him take a rabbit out of my pot. But the rabbit's going to be in the pot, in my house, and I'm going to be there with my daughter and my old lady, watching that pot. I'd like to see him take that rabbit out of that pot from right under our noses. All right, I'll tell him. Jack daddy come back. He says, Jack, you might as well forget about that girl. He says, whatever you gonna tell me, I'll do, Daddy. I ain't gonna forget about her. He wants you to take a rabbit out of the pot, but they're going to be sitting watching that pot, Jack. All right, I'm going to do it. So at night, Jack goes out there and he looks in the window and he sees them sitting around a pot. And he's got him a bag. And I didn't tell you this, but Jack is a good trapper. He can trap some wild things. And what he done trapped was 3 rabbits, one bigger than the next. And so he set one rabbit running into the house right off the porch. And the little girl, the daughter, she seen the rabbit run through the room. She said, "Daddy, there's a rabbit. Let's get that rabbit. We can put 2 rabbits in the pot." He said, "Don't mind that rabbit. Just watch the rabbit in the pot, honey." And then Jack he put a bigger one out in the room and scooped through the room, through the house. And the wife seen it. She says, "Honey, we better get that rabbit. It's bigger than the one we got in the pot. Don't you want a bigger rabbit?" He said, "You go wanting something better." He said, "You might lose what you got. Keep your eye on the pot." But then Jack put that big rabbit in there. And it run into the room. And by God, the doctor stood up. He said, well, what are you doing, girls? Get that big rabbit." And so they all go running around the house, and that rabbit was quick. It took them in the bedroom, and it took them on the porch, and it run off into the brush, and they run after it. And don't you know, Jack went in, and he got that rabbit. When they get back in the house, doctor said, "Darling, you better look at that rabbit and see, does it need any water in it?" But there wasn't nothing but gravy in that pot at that point. And Jack took that rabbit home next morning. Jack's daddy come with that rabbit half cooked, started to stink at this point. Come back with it. He says, "Well, Doc, look what my son did." And Doc looked at it. He says, "That's right good. That's right good. He's clever, isn't he? Your son's real clever. Well, I tell you what. You tell him that he's got to come to my house, and he's got to take the sheet off my bed, and me and my old lady's going to be sleeping in that bed, and I'm going to have every window nailed shut. And I'm going to tell you something else. I'm going to have them nailed shut. And you tell Jack if he break out one light in that window," they called a pane a light back in, the fun fact for you. He said, "He knock out one light in there one of my windows, I'm going to shoot him. You tell him that. All right?" Well, Jack's daddy, he went and he told him, he said, "Jack, this time you better forget about the girl." And he told Jack what he had to do. And Jack said, "I'm game, honey." And so he went. And sure enough, that night, old Doc and his wife sitting there in their nightcaps. "Good night, darling." "Good night, honey. Keep to your side of the bed, won't you?" "I will, dear." And they's just nodding off when they hear something tapping at the window. And he looks out there and he sees a shadow of a head with a hat sitting there outside his window, and it just a bumping up against the window. He says, "Jack, I know that's you." He said, "Let me tell you, you break out one pane of my window and I will shoot you, son." And that head goes down. And then the head pops back up, dunk, 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 against that window. He said, "Son, I ain't going to warn you, but one more time. This is it. This is that one more time. I'm going to shoot you if you break one pane out that window." And the head goes down. And Doc's just watching that window. You think he's got the, you think he ain't got enough sense to do it again? "I don't know, honey. I'm trying to sleep." Oh, sure enough, that head popped right back up. And this time, it broke out the light of the window, and the Doc bring up his rifle and pang, 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 like that. And he sees the body fall, and he hears a crash on the ground and a great commotion. And his wife said, "You done killed that boy." And he said, "I didn't try to kill him, darling. I wanted to scare him off." She said, "Well, you killed him for sure. You heard it? You heard him hit the ground? You hit him 3 times. And the Doc said, Oh, Lord, she said, "Honey, you better go down there and you better do something with that body or the law will come a-looking." So the Doc said, I will. And he runs out the door. And then she hears him come back in. And he says, "Honey, I'd like to move the body, but I don't want to get the blood on me. It'd be somewhat incriminating," because he had words like that under his hat, just incriminating. "It might be incriminating if I had his blood on me. I'd like to have something to wrap him up in." And she said, "Well, I don't know what that would be. You just got to get him out the yard and in the house. We'll figure something out to do with him in the morning." He said, well, darling, just anything that's lying around will do." She said, "Well, I don't know what that would be unless it's a sheet off our bed." He said, "Well, that'll do. why don't you just take that on off and throw it down to me? So she does. She takes it off and throws it down to him. Thank you, honey. I'll wrap him up and get rid of that body directly. She said, well, good. And then come to bed. She didn't have much of a conscience on her, did she? She's just worried about getting back to sleep and get rid of that body. But then she hear the doctor come back in. He says, honey, it's the strangest thing. You know, I went out there and there wasn't that boy at all. It was a scarecrow. He's just trying to scare us. And so I took this. She said, well, what do you mean? Is the scarecrow, was the scarecrow bleeding? No, it wasn't bleeding. What are you talking about? Well, why'd you wrap up a scarecrow why'd I wrap up a scarecrow in what? Why'd you wrap up a scarecrow in our sheet that I threw down to? You did not throw a sheet down to me. Well, I did. Well, you know that was Jack. And I don't know if I told you this, but Jack is a right good mimic. And he'd tricked them all. He had the sheet. He took it off the bed. Next morning, Jack Daddy come. He says, well, Doc, I got your sheet. And the doctor says, well, I tell you, I think, and before he could get the words out, Jack's daddy says, and Jack he's got 3 bullet holes in his hat, what proves you tried to kill him. And he ain't scared to go to the law and get the law involved if he needs to. Now, you gonna let him see that girl? Doctor said, oh, that's just what I was gonna say. Why don't you tell Jack to come on over and get that girl? And he doesn't need to talk to anybody about this. And that's what Jack did. Next morning, he come and he got that girl. He married her, and he got him a job. And I hear they're doing pretty good. Now, I don't know if you got a wife like mine, but if you do, hell, you know that she's almost worth all that mess that Jack went through, isn't she? So love will take you on some crazy trails and adventures, won't it? And it might take a while, but shoot, before you know it, you're going to be settled down and you're going to be doing just fine, just like Jack. All right, go on now.